Bearish sentiment obviously creeping in today. Is it the elections that didn't happen?
Well, I think you can't rule that out completely. But what we have is a situation where I think a lot of the political risk or perceived political risk had been sort of priced into the index. We had seen significant sell-offs in this market over the last month or so. And I just don't really think that the postponement of the election would have heightened that risk overly.
Right.
But, you know, the idea really is that if we can't get the elections right, it might raise questions about the Nigeria project as a whole. So I do believe that the elections postponement was in the best interest of the country, just so that we could have a proper and credible process. But I don't know to what extent it has affected investor sentiment.
How do you think that sentiment is reflected in the currency? It's currently in the region of 154 naira, but there was a moment in the day when it was 155. And some have been looking at the Nigerian euro bond, albeit a very small figure of 500 million, but the sense is that the yields could start rising.
Well, I think the yields on the euro bond say it all. What we have seen is increased demand at the CBN's WDAS, and a lot of that demand is related to trade. You're having a lot of petroleum marketers and importers bringing forward their orders, just as everybody scrambles to take advantage of a strong naira and their expectation that the naira will devalue going forward. But I think to the extent that the CBN has maintained that it will keep the naira at least in the official window between the plus or minus 3% of 150 band, I would assume that the central bank would come out and defend the naira once again, as it did at last week's auction. So my concerns for the naira do not go significantly beyond the election period. Obviously, the extension or the prolonging of this election process has made it a slightly more glim outlook over the next month. But all said, as I said before, I think a lot of the negative sentiment is already baked in.
I mean, also all eyes on the petroleum sector, not least some very good results from one of the leading energy services companies, Oando, but also Nigeria is effectively the largest exporter of crude oil from Africa into the United States. So investors are interested on a variety of fronts. What do you make of the sector?
Well, the petroleum marketing sector so far, we've only seen one result from the listed companies, and that was Oando. Strong results. We had top line grow 12%. Profit after tax came in 42% above last year. So all said, strong numbers. In terms of our exports and crude oil, we're seeing Bonny Light crude, which is the index for Nigeria, trade at about $1 or $2 premium to Brent. And as you know, crude prices have been rising. That's just positive for Nigeria in general. As long as we continue to have some peace in the Niger Delta region, we're continuing to see production rise. At the beginning of this year, we're looking at about 2.3 million barrels per day. As at the last estimates by the central bank, we're looking at about 2.4 million barrels per day of crude and condensate. So I think things are positive right now, and I just hope that the postponement of this election doesn't really rock the boat too much.
New CEO for the Nigeria Stock Exchange, I think a very challenging day for him, but has that calmed the nerves?
Well, I think in terms of Mr. Oscar Onyema and taking over the Nigerian Stock Exchange, he's been shadowing the interim DG for a while, if I understand things correctly. So I don't think he's a fish out of water right now. I think he's been there and he's been in the markets through the sell-off we've had in the last month and a half or so. So I don't think today was a challenging day for him. Obviously, he would have liked to start it off on a positive note, but unfortunately that didn't happen.